Good afternoon, everyone. Is that mic on? If I can encourage you to move up to the front and fill the seats as much as possible. We'll kick off around about now. Just a bit of housekeeping, which I'm sure you already know by now. For each speaker, we'll have 20 minutes talk time, followed by 5 minutes of questions from the audience. You're very welcome to either use the QR code and ask your question via Slido, or you're more than welcome to raise your hand and ask. We'll have microphones on the floor as well. And with that, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for the session, who is Sam Alderton Johnson from Impact Policy. Please welcome Sam.
All right, I've got a lapel mic on. Everyone can hear me. My friends are all still coming in. No nervous walk of shame, but come in, grab a chair. We're going to have some fun together. I want to take a moment to thank Aunt for her welcome to country this morning. My name is Sam Johnson. I'm a proud Djaara and Yuin man. I'm from the strong, staunch black communities of Glebe and Redfern, which are a stone's throw from where we meet today. And I want to pay my deepest respects to the elders from the communities of which I'm from, and recognise that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Now, thank you, Aunt, for her welcome this morning. What I want to touch on, though, when I lean into that welcome is that this nation that we're standing on today is bordered by 3 rivers. We've got the Georges River, the Cooks River, and the Nepean River. They all make up what makes this nation that we're standing on today. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about rivers today. You're going to think this guy loves rivers, he's all about it. Honestly, my son's middle name is River. His name's Yuin River. So I do have a bias. But we have this quote that we love at Impact Policy when we think about CoDesign, and it's about the river. And it goes that we never step in the same river twice, because both we and that river are in a constant state of change. We like to think about that. We would like to think about that for us as researchers, as practitioners, that from project to project, we're never the same. We're constantly changing. Just like our communities are in a constant state of flow. Depending on what's happening in our communities and on our countries, our communities are in a constant state of change as well. So we sat and we leant into that fetish that I've got for rivers and started thinking about how can we explain this concept of co-design. Co-design is something that we started talking about at Impact Policy, largely because we were so frustrated with everything being called co-design when it was anything but. So we sat with this as blackfellas and we thought about how can we break down and make this something that is clear, people can start to understand the concept and start to think about how they can embed this in the research and evaluation world to have the most impact for their work and for our people as well. So what I'm going to ask, now that we've got the last of our stragglers that have come in, to grab a pen and grab a piece of paper. And I'm going to pause until I can see that most of us have had a chance to have a go at doing that. I can imagine you've been listening to... I just rocked up here because I never paid for a ticket. I'm here to do my speech and I'm going. And I forgot to register my 2 other co-presenters. That's why they're not here either. So, but having said that, I'm sure I probably would have listened to a stack load of statistics this morning and stuff very far removed from the realities of the communities in which this work is about. So pull out a piece of paper, grab a pen, and I want you to take 10 seconds to draw a river. I'm sure, I'm no artist, but I'm sure many of you can squiggle a few lines. You're right, Brad, you get a pass. You just do your best. You just nod and give me a round of applause, make me look like I'm doing a decent job. All right, so we think about co-design, we think about co-design as the river. What makes up a river? Well, we've got the head, we've got the mouth of the river, we've got the river bed, deep below, that water that's flowing. We've got the river bank, and we've got those pebbles, those city feet pebbles you've got to slowly step across if you've spent too much time on this country when you might go back home. Now, I'm not going to ask anyone to share their picture, but I will nervously look over people's shoulders and I will quietly judge But that's okay, because there's no wrong answers and no drawings. Most important thing to think about CoDesign, like I said, it looks very different depending on who you are, the community that you're in, and what that looks like as well. But if we break down this concept of the river, what we've got is we've got the head, the mouth, the riverbed, the banks, those pebbles, and that flow. That flow of water, which most people have done, which is literally just the flow of water, represents our people, our communities, our country. That makes me feel better, just a bit of physical attack, I'm going to get there. That river, that water represents our communities, our country, our culture, our kin. They represent our stories. They represent our trauma, our pain, our survival, and our resilience. When you step into our communities, when you do research and evaluation, that's what you're trying to understand. You're trying to come in, you're trying to build a connection, build a relationship, and as a result of that time together, you inform some sort of research and evaluation outcome that strengthens an understanding of that area of interest that you're looking at together. The mouth of the river represents our motivation for the work, our why. Why are we doing this? Generally, it's a funding grant, might be an academic area of expertise or interest, might be a government agency's project or policy that they want somebody to come in and understand the impact of. That's how we see traditional research practice looking for the most part. When we think about a co-design lens, where we're trying to get to ideally is this opportunity for our communities to start self-determining the research agenda. Our communities being able to self-determine what their priorities are for research in their communities and on their country. Deep below that flow of water that many of you are able to pull together, we've got our riverbed. Our riverbed represents our governance, our connection, our relationships. So often in the research design journey, you're preparing for ethics applications, you're building in mechanisms to support, getting approval to do that work. Part of that might look like advisory groups, might look like different things as well. But these are opportunities for us to start to think about our community, our elders, our senior leaders, or people that have been given permission to speak about what it is that we're talking about. They're the voices that we need to be centering when we're going on a design journey around research and evaluation. These are the cultural principles and protocols that are essential to giving a voice to and helping to inform what we're designing and building together. How's everyone's necks feeling from me nervously pacing from side to side? Are we okay? I promise I'll go back up there. Just give me a minute. I'll get through this entry and opening and we'll be all right together. Alongside the riverbank represents power. It also represents this question around what can we share, what can we give up, what are we willing to relinquish? So often we think about co-design from an evaluation perspective in terms of us being in the driver's seat, being the decision makers, determining the road ahead. The co-design framework tells us that this is about being able to share power, share decision making, and give our people agency in determining how best this research should happen and how it should look. That means, what questions should we be asking? What should we be listening for? How should this happen? Where should this happen? Who should be doing this work? It's all that sort of stuff that's parts of that critical puzzle to make sure that when you get to implementation phase, our people have had a voice and agency in how we've got there. What we see is when we do that, we see an increasingly strong level of participation, trust and respect for the research that happens in our communities. Alongside that beautiful windy river that many of you have done are these pebbles. Pebbles are different sizes, different shapes. Those pebbles represent our voices, our lived experience in our communities. Some are louder, some are quieter. As blackfellas, we are not one homogenous group. We are diverse people from country to community, from cultural experience. Often when we think about engagement, and we think about engagement of our people in a research and evaluation world, we think about our people in this homogenous space. But what I encourage you to think about when you think about those pebbles is picking up those smaller pebbles that maybe aren't always the loudest in the room. I say that with full respect to all of our people, but from the perspective of lived experience, that adds the most impact to research design. So, for example, you might have heard Yuin reference the Walama List. That's an evaluation that's about to kick off that we got to be a part of co-designing the qualitative method of. One of the first steps with that work was making sure that those pebbles, the pebbles of the voices of our people, either still in prison right now or recently released, are the loudest voices, the strongest and largest pebbles that shape the start of that engagement and co-design journey together. And then we've got the mouth, the final piece of this river system framework at Impact Policy. The mouth represents what comes out of this work. Often it's an evaluation, it's a report, it's a journal article, it's something that maybe we've determined the outcome of. Co-design gives us the opportunity to let our people shape what that outcome looks like. Often our people say we want shared benefits as a result of participation. Not from a perspective of being greedy, but a perspective of wanting to have meaningful outcomes as a result of sharing their stories and their voices. We saw that specifically with Walama, where we had fellas in the cells saying, I want to share my story, but I want other young fellas in my community to be able to hear my stories, to be able to understand my journey, and hopefully for them not be able to come through something like this as well. Too often we see outcomes of research, not always, but when we don't explore, and think about opportunities for co-design, where the outputs aren't accessible. They sit behind academic paywalls, they're inaccessible for our people, and they're communicated in language that doesn't translate to the way that we talk to each other at a local level. And that's what the opportunity for co-design is it gives us the opportunity to share some of that power back to our people, to give us the opportunity to make sure we're creating stuff that has shared benefits, has shared ownership, and we embed those principles around Indigenous data sovereignty, shared ownership of data, and critical Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. How'd it go? It's all right? Okay. I got here like an hour ago, and I did that for too long. My name's Sam Johnson. I'm from Impact Policy. Impact Policy is a social policy consulting firm. We partner really closely with the public sector around what we call the 5 pieces of the policy puzzle: strategy, engagement, co-design, communications, research and evaluation. We believe that they're the core pillars of what builds strong policy and can have the most meaningful impact for our communities and for our clients as well. We're called Impact Policy because policy for such a long time has been a weapon that's been used both consciously and unconsciously that's disproportionately impacted our people. If you want to follow more about the work that we do, it's my shameless plug right now to follow us on LinkedIn. We have a range of free resources that get released weekly thought leadership, a free podcast resource, and we've also got free co-design training that goes for 1 hour. It's free, it's online, as well as a range of other free online resources that you can access as well. But you can only access it through LinkedIn. So if you want to find out more about that, you can reach out there. The River System Framework, I've done my best to do it in 10 minutes, but we've also got a free resource. It's a 2-page handout. Gives you the 1-page infographic about what the river system looks like and breaks that down in practice. Again, that's all available online. Reach out to us, grab us after this. My email will be somewhere in here if I work out that I actually had a slide deck for today, and you'll be able to get that too. So, which button do I press to move the thing? The green. The green. Green means go. Mad. Love that quote. If you take away nothing from today, you'll take away that co-design river reference, and that's good enough for me. Why is this a problem though? Why do we talk about co-design, and should we be thinking about it from this research and evaluation lens? I might ruffle a few feathers here. I don't have a PhD. I graduated with honours. It's like a Timu PhD. I didn't quite get there. But what we see these sorts of stuff here, the colonial legacy in research and evaluation. Research was a tool of colonisation. Our people's language, our culture, our customs, our sites, our stories were all researched on, but not for our benefit. It wasn't for community's benefit, it was for control. That sort of stuff still lingers today in these feelings of us as people, feeling like the most over-researched people on the planet, but with the lowest voice in terms of determining what comes out of that sort of stuff. We see a disconnection from lived experience. So what we experience, particularly as Aboriginal practitioners working in this sort of space, is we see that our standpoint as blackfellas working in research and evaluation is always often feels second to or less than traditional academic Western research methods and practitioners. There's this lack of cultural safety that can often be experienced in evaluation. A big part of that as well is because there's been no investment in relationships, there's been no investment at the forefront of evaluation and research projects. Critical part of cultural safety is connection, accountability, and if your first interaction with somebody on a research project is the day I'm here to talk to you about, what your experience was in that Aboriginal justice program, how can you know who I am if there's no relational connection? If I'm a blackfella, who I am, where I'm from, how we might be connected. If I'm non-Aboriginal, have you had a chance to assess and understand if this is a safe space for you to be able to share the context of your cultural or community-based experience? That's where the power of CoDesign comes in, because you actually have an opportunity to start to embed those foundations so that when you do implement your research projects, you have this ability to create more cultural safety and control for a range of different things. And then, often we see evaluation without accountability. So we often hear our community saying, little is changing. We say the same things over and over again. Or we have no ability to speak back to how our experiences or perspectives are being communicated. So we've got this opportunity to start to rethink research and design, thinking about CoDesign as method. We get the opportunity to reframe research as relationship. It starts with trust building. It's not about data extraction. It's not about transaction. It's really about starting with relationships. If I sit in a room with blackfellas and I talk about CoDesign, it is like the most simple concept to grasp. We are relational people. We exist in connection to one another. We don't exist in isolation. So much of this critical principle comes back to relationships. Relationships with people, with communities, with countries, how we can work together and start to share and shift from what do we want to know as researchers and practitioners to how best do we, get out of the way sometimes and work out what our communities and stakeholders want to change and how best we work alongside them to do that work and do that work well. But what is CoDesign? Maybe you don't like rivers. Maybe maybe you're not a drawer, and maybe you just need something high level. I'm trying to just make it as digestible as possible. Basically, it means working together with others to create something new. In this instance, we're talking about research. We're talking about research projects. But the critical part is making sure everyone, no matter their background or abilities, has a voice in the creation process. So that means the academic with a PhD has just as loud as a voice as some of them men sitting in the cells at Downing Centre waiting for their sitting that day for the Walama List. Everyone's voice is as loud in shaping how research or evaluations should be designed. In traditional research and design, one person makes the decisions for the most part. That's traditionally how we see research practice play out. In CoDesign, many people are working together from the start. We did that Walama piece with Edwina and her team. We got DCJ, we got Justice Health, we got the judges, we got the elders, we got the fellas that are in custody, we've got community services that are working alongside the participants. A whole range of stakeholders have a voice in terms of informing how best we design an evaluation that meaningfully captures what we're trying to understand. It's a team effort. Running short from time. I hope no one got no questions because I don't think we're going to stop. But I'll tell you what, I'll stick around, and if anyone really wants to ask me something, they can grab me. These are some principles around CoDesign in practice. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but what I will talk about is being iterative and being inclusive. Real critical piece with CoDesign is that you go back. It's iterative. People need to understand that this is not the last time I will see you. The first time that you've spoken to me is the start of that relationship. Really important for us, like I said, we started with those fellas in the phone booth in the basement of Downing Centre, asking them about how best we should shape up the design of this evaluation. It was really important for them men to understand that we're going to come back and we're going to test what we'd heard with them, and that they had the power to let us know we were hearing them right, we were moving in the right direction, or they had agency to let us know, hey, you need to pivot, you need to pause, you need to look in a different way. And that comes back to being inclusive, prioritising engagement in that example, particularly for people in custody as well. The opportunity here, we get the centre lived experience and cultural authority. And I might just play this. This is from a friend of mine, her name's Chloe Quayle. She's also a family member of a participant of the Walama List. And if I press the green button, it will play it.
Walama was freaky. Because my brother ended up getting sentenced. And they're like, which was great because he's still drinking. And we're like, oh, look, we get you have an addiction, but it's more like your trauma what needs to be addressed, not your addiction. Yeah. And I'm like, God. Yeah. And then the judge takes his wig off and his robe, and he comes down and he cuddles my brother. And I'm looking at him like, all right, abolishment friends aren't going to like this. Because we talk about abolishing prisons and stuff. And here he is hugging a judge. And then the judge looked at me and he's like, and I'm like, go on then. And Ricky Onus is there. I'm looking at him like, please don't tell him. And then the police prosecutor comes up. Yeah. Only my brother can, it's his life. Yeah. But he'd be hugging judges and they'd be taking their wigs off like, yeah, come give me some love. Fuck.
Totally, but that's the thing though, hey, when you change the system from being about punishment to being about healing.
Yeah.
That's what happens, right?
Everyone. Yeah. Like I never seen that judge was a human to me in that moment. The police prosecutor, I didn't hate her. Which was weird, but it's like, oh, you're a human. Like, people don't want to see people suffer.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just that education around.
That's it.
People aren't bad; they just do bad things, or just find themselves in shit situations.
Yeah, that's it.
So we talk about when we were sitting about at Riverbank, if I can take you back to my love of the river, thinking about how we share power and how we start to think about principles of critical Indigenous research methods, storytelling, yarning, as respected principles, not secondary to or less than traditional research methods, but particularly in these situations, equal to as well. That example from Chloe is such a powerful example of how story, of how yarning as a qualitative method really captures stuff that other stuff just scrapes the surface of. It's an opportunity for us to build relational connection, yarn, and through that, really understand some of the more deeper sort of things that we start to sort of need to think about when we're thinking about designing research together. A big part of that yarn really helped us start to think about we need to actually understand the impact of Walama on the family. We, again, as blackfellas, we don't experience things in isolation. Our experience is relational. And so if we're trying to understand the qualitative impact of a pilot, court process, then we need to be looking at that from a family-centred perspective. And we need to be including people like Chloe and others in terms of how we understand the impact of such research. That always doesn't happen, but that's the opportunity that we can have if we sit and we ask the right questions, we spend time doing the right engagement, communication, and we create a safe space that's grounded in relationships and trust. This is flashing red. Does that mean that's 2 minutes left or 2 minutes to questions? 2 minutes over time. Someone's supposed to ring a bell or something, I don't know. Well, you want me to wrap up or what do I do? Nah, don't worry about questions. I'll take the extra minute. Yeah? All right. Okay, have your minute? Mad. Thank you, Aunt. There we go. All right, well, I might leave you with 2 slides. Second last one, spectrum of participation. Take a moment, sit there, look at it, and think about the last project you worked on. Hopefully research and evaluation project, doesn't have to be though, and ask yourself the question, when it came to our communities, where did you sit on that spectrum? Generally in traditional research, we see, that spectrum of participation sitting around engagement at best. I would say more so in my experience, it's been around information and consultation, going through the standard, get a support letter from the ACO and, bolster up our ethics application, and fingers crossed the 6th revision will get approved. Where we want to try and get, where we've talked about today with this river system sort of stuff, is where our community have the highest level of participation. Ultimately, we'd love to get to that co-production phase, which is what I talked to you at the start about being the utopia, about our community self-determining the research agenda. But for now, we'll settle for co-design. This just talks about how mad it is. The ripple effects. What it takes to work well actually is really important, because these are the barriers that we experience. Everyone want to do co-design, but nobody want to do it any longer than 4 weeks. Takes time, takes resources. You need to pay lived experience experts. You need to pay people sitting on governance committees and groups, not just expect people to consult. And you need to pay people like Impact Policy or others to support you to do it, because often university academic institutions, public sector government agencies, no offence, but you represent the colony, and our systems, and there's a massive gross power imbalance from the forefront. Not always. If you're great as an operator and as a researcher and as a person that can engage, you can cut through that. But I'm saying it can really, really help if you have somebody there to support you on that co-design journey from the forefront. Final reflections. It's an opportunity to rethink, for you, who your research is for, what it's for. And, when lived experience, cultural authority and co-design get to lead the way, we don't just elevate impact, we create it. So ask yourself, you're always holding the pen, who's getting to decide what matters, and what could be possible if we gave some of that power back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for the offer of skipping through question time. Very powerful presentation, and like Sam said, I encourage anyone to find Sam after the presentation and have a yarn and ask your questions. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.